So, with the lockdown being extended, although most of us seen it coming, I think a lot of people are experiencing some really intense emotional reactions, particularly anyone with pre existing mental health issues or with a past experience of trauma. And I'm hearing a lot about, a lot of anger, resentment, high anxiety, restlessness, insomnia, frustration. And I mean, these are all completely normal reactions. So, it's finding a lot of compassion for yourself, no matter what it is that you're experiencing. However, when we experience really intense visceral reactions in our body, which is what emotional reactions are, we have a tendency to want to go one or two ways. We either over engage with them, and kind of ruminate and continuously create catastrophic futures of which we have no guarantee are going to actually occur, or we tend to want to numb out and avoid dealing with whatever it is that's coming up for us. And anyone with prior addiction issues may feel themselves very drawn to their old coping mechanisms at the moment. We're no longer distracted by the busyness of our day-to-day lives, and consequently we're left with our thoughts, we're left with our feelings a lot more. And it's being very mindful about where you allow your energy to go over the next while, because ultimately, in order to come out the other side of this, we need to be resilient. We need to conserve our energy for looking after ourselves, looking after the people that we love, as opposed to allowing ourselves to be completely drained by scrolling through the negativity in our phones, scrolling through our negative thoughts, and engaging with our negative feelings at an excessive level. So, although rumination is always the easiest thing to do, I mean, it feels very safe. It feels like as if we're doing something preventative by worrying about the future and predicting what it's going to be like. And yet, all we are really doing is pushing ourselves into an emotional state for no reason. I mean, we're literally forcing ourselves to experience the pain of a future that we know nothing about. So, being very aware and reminding yourself of that at all times is really important. Likewise, when you notice difficult feelings coming up, be very present. I mean, our tendency is to be on autopilot, and we don't tend to listen to our bodies. We don't tend to listen to what it is that's going on inside, and instead we over engage with our thought processes. And this is where a lot of our anxiety comes from. So, if we can bring it back down into the body through a body scan or through a grounding exercise and really identify what it is that we're feeling. Am I feeling, kind of an uneasiness in my tummy? Am I feeling tightness in my shoulders? Am I feeling, a tightness in my head? Is my jaw clenched? And checking in with the body on a regular basis. Likewise, doing an almost hourly check-in where you just ask yourself some basic questions. How am I feeling? What's going on for me at the minute? Can I really clarify what my biggest fear is? Can I put it down in paper and rationalize it a little bit more so that it's not running tracks around my head and causing me huge distress? And again, it's being very observant of where you're allowing your mind to wander to. Is it to places that don't actually exist in your current reality? Because again, an awful lot of the way we experience life is a construct of our own thoughts, our past experiences, our bias, and the way in which we interpret the world. So again, we have a certain amount of control that we can implement. We can tell ourselves a nicer story. We can reassure ourselves the way we would a child, that we have no way of knowing what's going to happen in the future. So why are we forcing ourselves to live through a story in our heads that is full of doom and gloom, and keeping it in the body, bringing yourself back down to where am I at the moment and how can I honor where I am. And again, I suppose when it comes to a lot of these practices, they can be difficult because no sooner have we grounded ourselves than we're off again in cloud cuckoo land. So it's about recognizing that the practice is about observing the fact that you have gone again and bringing yourself right back to the present and doing that again and again and again. It's basically like training a puppy. But not that I've ever trained a puppy that well, but anyway, It's basically just bringing yourself back to the present moment as frequently as you can. And that's the success. That's the actual practice. A lot of people assume that there's some kind of nirvana that they have to reach through their meditative practice. And they sit there for ages and they get so frustrated with themselves because they're not getting any instant gratification, or they're not getting to any utopian place of equanimity. But the reality is that doesn't exist. And it's so liberating to use these techniques without an agenda or without expectations, just using them for the sheer relief that they can give you if you go into them with openness and without expectation, So, really enjoying deep breaths just for the sake of breathing deeply and bringing yourself back into your body, just giving yourself a few moments, even if it's just 30 seconds, of observing your thoughts and of, I suppose, identifying the thoughts that are causing you pain and distress, and saying, hang on a second, I don't need to allow this thought to run riot. I can tolerate a little bit of discomfort. I can tolerate a little bit of not knowing if I just recognize that that's what it actually is, and I can sit with it, And again, a lot of our focus is on letting things go. And, if you don't let them go, then you're a failure and you're not doing things right. But an awful lot of these things you can't let go. I mean, our head works the way our head works. Our emotional responses are what they are. Whereas if we can learn to kind of recognize them and nearly be like, oh, Jesus, there that goes again, it gives us a lot more autonomy and it gives us a lot more peace of mind. Likewise, we tend to focus an awful lot on things that we can't control or that we know nothing about. Whereas if we can instead distract ourselves with what we can exert agency over. So make a list of coping strategies for when you do feel particularly anxious or when you're filled with negative emotions, whether it be a playlist, whether it be your breathing exercises, whether it be just practicing writing your thoughts down and rationalizing a little bit with the actual validity of them. And put all of these things down on a list and put it up on your fridge, because oftentimes these coping mechanisms, whilst they sound so practical and easy to apply, when you're in the height of it, the last thing you want to do is to write down on paper or to deep breathly. All you want to do, because it's very addictive, is engage with that anxious thought. Whereas if you have something written on your fridge where you can see it, a kind of a plan or a structure put in place, then it'll be a lot easier to utilize it and to bring yourself back to homeostasis. Likewise, try to keep some sort of structure in your day. I cannot emphasize this enough. I mean, if you just let your day kind of run into nothingness, you are going to find yourself almost getting caught up in that existential, what the hell is going on with my life? What is this all about? Whereas if you kind of have a little bit of an agenda for yourself, which involves a lot of care, as opposed to kind of reverting to all of the easy things to do, which is zoning out with your phone and watching Netflix and just eating junk. Try to implement some things that tell you at a very a subconscious level that I am caring for me, so nutritious food, getting adequate sleep, getting a little bit of exercise, doing a little bit of stretching, connecting with other people, getting out of your own head and doing something nice for others. I mean, again, our relationships, there's a lot of strain on them at the moment. We really need to look after them, and we can be so self-absorbed in our own bullshit that we forget about our partners. We forget about the fact that they may be struggling or they may be experiencing a lot of hardship that they're not able to verbalize or to communicate. So, thinking about other people's perspective rather than always being caught up on your own, and recognizing that we do tend to, kind of be drawn to the negative, that we do tend to assume life is going to be terrible, and that because things have been rough the last few weeks, that they're going to continue to be rough. And we do tend to predict catastrophically, as opposed to, first of all, recognizing that we have no way of knowing the future, but also that doesn't keep us in a good place. If we can just be very kind in our thoughts and create the nicest stories possible, it will help us through this. So again, lots of deep breathing, lots of self-compassion, lots of compassion and kindness for others, lots of looking after yourself, lots of, I suppose, leniency irritability as well. I mean, do your best in this situation, because none of us has a rule book here, you know, and we all want to come out the other end as well as possible. I hope everyone is having a lovely Easter Sunday.